If I cannot see it, I cannot believe it.
Okay.
But the values that are behind it are immaculate. I appreciate it.
So Vasu, we met you, I think, a few months ago when we were out doing the show on campus.
Yes.
And you had initially spoken to another member from our church, not me, who was doing the show. And you were interested in continuing the conversation. We've gotten together a few times since then. I think we've talked about the existence of God. We've talked about his potential revelation through Jesus. And I had asked you over text, what's one of the things, or some of the biggest things that keep you from believing in Christianity personally? And your answer to that question was what?
My answer to that question was that I believe that there is Christianity and there is Jesus, right, in people's lives, and you believe in Jesus. But my point is, I'm an agnostic myself, and I don't only believe in Jesus, but I don't believe in any God. It's because I've never seen God. It's because I don't have any evidence of seeing God or giving me a way to believe in God in any way other than the Bible.
Gotcha.
Right? And people say a lot of good stuff about Jesus and how they believe in the Bible and it has good values. I love the values in the Bible. They're very good, but I just don't have that evidence. It's hard for me to believe it.
Gotcha. So for you personally, you don't believe in any religion in particular, including Christianity, because you haven't seen compelling evidence for it being true.
Yeah, and if the evidence was there, let's just put it this way. Let's just say if Jesus was there and I saw Jesus helping people, I saw Jesus, being sinless and all these qualities that are in the book and really showing these qualities amongst people, and I would believe it. I would say there is Jesus. Jesus is Lord, and he is the God that people should be believing in.
Interesting. So if you had seen Jesus himself during his ministry doing the things that the Bible says he did, healing people, helping people, living a righteous life, then you would believe in him personally.
Yes. If I could see that happen, that belief would be there.
But you don't believe that because you haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it, and I haven't seen it for any of the other gods.
Gotcha.
Either.
Gotcha. Just to make sure that we're on the same page, because it's important. Whenever you're trying to make progress in conversations like this, you want to make sure that that we're understanding each other first. So, just to make sure I understand where you're coming from, it sounds like you believe that there is a higher power out there, or a cause of the universe that is a lot like what many people consider God to be. Is that correct or no?
That is correct.
Okay. Great. Yes. But it sounds like you're not sure if that being is the God of Christianity or the God of Islam or the God of Judaism or the God of any religion out there.
Exactly, because if I cannot see it, I cannot believe it.
Okay.
But the values that are behind it are immaculate. I appreciate it. And I like the people who live in it too.
Yeah.
And I could see where they're going, why they want these values, why they follow that book, because it makes them a good person. Not just for themselves, but for society.
Gotcha.
And they're like some of the topics that come from the Bible and other books, I want those values in myself too. So I read them, I learn from them, and I put myself out there.
Nice. Oh, that's great to hear, man. Yeah. So maybe you can help me understand more where you're coming from here. When you say that you would have to see it, are you saying that you would have to see, like, in order to believe that God has revealed himself through Jesus, you would have had to see Jesus doing the things the Bible says he did, the miracles, his ministry to people, his death and resurrection? Like, those are things that you would have to see yourself in order to believe it?
Yes.
Okay.
Like when people say, like, you can say, oh, I see Jupiter or I see Mars, and people will be like, I don't believe you.
Right.
I don't see Jupiter. Like, I'm out here sitting. What I see right now is the grass. I see the trees and I see the sky. Right? But what are you talking about? I don't see Mars or Jupiter. But then I can say that, but when it's nighttime and the stars are out there and you take a telescope and you look up there, you could see Mars, you could see Jupiter, you could see the rings around them, and you could see, oh, okay, I believe it.
You can see it yourself.
I could see it myself.
Yeah.
I believe it that, oh, there are such things as planets, and they exist. And this is why I went into astronomy, because I could see where we're going. I could see we want to do research, want to figure things out. We want to find a planet X, right? And until it's not seen, it's hard for me to believe it, right?
Gotcha. So for you personally, there are a lot of things that you can't believe or you wouldn't believe until you saw it yourself.
Yes.
Right. I'm curious though, because I'm sure there are things you believe that you haven't seen or that you haven't personally experienced, right? For example, what you would probably agree that the deepest part of the ocean is the Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench, right, which is about 7 miles, beneath the surface of the water. I'm assuming you would accept that, scientific fact based on other people's measurements, even though you haven't personally experienced it or seen it or measured it yourself, right?
It's easier for me to believe in that. And the reason for that is because there's enough technology out there, and you can make an invention that could literally have those objects, measurements, devices go down there and show and have a camera attached to it.
Sure.
And I could be like, oh wow, there is this stuff. I could see it, right? So it's easy to believe it.
Yeah, so you can know that, you can believe that, even though you haven't seen it or experienced it personally.
Yes, but I wouldn't trust it all the way. I would need to see it. I'd be like, sure, that has logic, that has a point, but I need you to, like, if that's the mindset and if that's the thought, I believe you, it's possible, right? It logically makes sense. But why don't we actually start on this project? Why don't we get the cameras rolling? Why don't we make the device that can take and go through a lot of pressure, go down and dig holes and figure everything out and see those layers and see that existence, that it's there.
Sure.
And if it's there, I'll be like, yeah, you're right. I see this evidence. We see this footage. We see this data. It's there.
Yeah. So you could go investigate it yourself, and maybe that would increase your confidence, that it's true. But I'm assuming that even though you haven't investigated the depth of the Mariana Trench, right, that you still accept that it's the deepest part of the ocean based on what other people have done, right?
Yes, right. I do accept that it could be there.
Yeah.
But
maybe not as much as if you had seen it personally.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
So I could always say like, oh yeah, people have said this, and there is a Mariana thing from what people have said. I personally have not experienced that. I personally have not seen it. But I would like to see it. If someone can show me data or if someone can show me footage, I can believe it. I can tell people, oh, I've seen it.
Yeah, and until then, you would still believe it's true. Maybe you wouldn't have as much confidence in it as if you had measured it yourself, right? But you still believe that it's the deepest part of the ocean, right?
I would believe it, yes.
Right, yeah.
I would believe it, but I would still need... I wouldn't believe it all the way. Like,
okay.
it would...
Not as much as if you had seen it yourself, you mean?
Yes,
Gotcha.
It's just different when people say, oh, I have seen this, and I could say that's on behalf of what people say, and they're my friends, and they're scientists, and I can agree, they're engineers, whatever they are, right?
I hear what you're saying. I can definitely understand where you're coming from. You have to see something to believe it. But it sounds like, I think you would agree, and you can just tell me if you don't. It seems like there's a lot of things that we believe to be true, even though we don't see it or experience it ourselves, right? Like we believe that the Challenger Deep is the deepest part of the ocean, even though we haven't investigated that ourselves. I'm assuming you would believe that George Washington was the first president of the United States, even though you haven't investigated that yourself, right?
Yes, that's something I can believe.
Even though you didn't see that, you didn't experience that personally, and maybe you even haven't conducted thorough historical research on
there's
that.
Pictures of him. People have pictures of him. I've seen there's his signatures we see right in the museums. So I'm just like, wow, and the paper's old and it's crumbly and it's old and it just looks like it could deteriorate. You can poke it once and the entire paper can just break and it can fall off and crumple.
Yeah, so there you go. So those are other evidences, other reasons for believing that he was the first president, even though you didn't see that or experience that personally.
Yes.
Right. The point that I'm getting at here is actually pretty simple. It's just that we have other ways of knowing stuff aside from just seeing it or experiencing it ourselves. right?
Yes, I can agree to that.
Yeah. Scientific truths like the depth of the ocean, historical truths like who was the first president of the United States. We have other ways of knowing these things aside from just seeing it ourselves or experiencing it ourselves.
Yes,
Yeah.
I can agree to that.
And I think the same would be true of philosophical truths. Like we've talked about the best explanation of the universe, being something like God, that the cause of all physical reality can't itself be physical because it exists prior to the physical. That's something that I think we can believe in and accept as true, even though we haven't seen that or maybe experienced that personally, right?
Yes.
So I think there are more ways of knowing things aside from just seeing it. You would agree?
I can agree to that, but
Yeah.
but it has to. But I want to see those results.
Sure.
I wanna
what do you
see
mean by that exactly?
I want to see the evidence.
Like what reasons would we have for believing it if we haven't seen it ourselves? What are the other reasons we could have for believing it instead? Is that what you mean?
Data, evidence on paper. I believe that World War II happened, right? There's pictures. I've seen into the
Even
memorial.
though you didn't experience it yourself or see it yourself, you believe it happened.
I believe
for
it
other
happened.
reasons.
Yeah, because
Right.
I could go to Boston. I could go to where I could go and I could see all the dead bodies, the graves. I could see. I don't know where they put. It's in Boston, right? Where they put those dead bodies,
I'm
where
not
they have the
sure.
memorials, where they have all the sculptures. They have all the history written down over there. I feel like you can even leave World War II, like other wars. There's pieces of their evidence in other states. You can go back and you can look at it. You can be like, oh wow, it's sad. This is where this happened. This is where the massacre occurred. This is where this problem happened. I could believe it.
Right.
That's evidence right there.
Gotcha. Just to make sure I'm understanding you correctly, when you're saying I have to see it to believe it, are you referring to? It sounded like earlier when you were saying I wish I could have seen Jesus performing these miracles and doing these things. It sounded like when you said I have to see it to believe it, that the idea that you're getting at there is I would have had to experience it personally. Is that what you mean, or are you instead saying I have to see the evidence for it? I don't necessarily have to experience it myself. Like I don't have to experience World War II myself, but I have to see the evidence for World War II in order to believe it.
There has to. Oh, if I'm not there to see it, to believe it, there has to be compelling evidence.
Okay.
There has to be something I could see still, right? I mean, I'm not there to be part of it.
Right.
But I can put it this way: I don't need to be part of it to believe in it, but I need to see the evidence of it being there where it happened.
Sure.
There were footprints. There were or like numbers talk a lot, or like signatures talk a lot. Some type of evidence to prove it to me that yes, it happened.
It sounds like you agree then that you can believe something is true for other reasons aside from just seeing it yourself. If there's compelling evidence, scientific evidence, historical evidence, philosophical evidence that something's true, then you can believe that it's true. You don't have to see it yourself.
Yes, but scientific evidence would be the way to go.
Okay. So seeing some kind of evidence for it.
Yes.
You'd want to see some kind of evidence for it.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Because I'm doing aerospace, a lot for me is numbers and science and data, and that's what I believe in. Because for me, numbers talk a lot. People can just say whatever.
Right.
But it cannot be true.
I guess it sounds like you agree that there are other ways of knowing things aside from just experiencing it personally.
Yeah.
And that definitely seems true. A lot of the things that we know and that we believe we haven't seen or experienced ourselves. Now, that said, personal experience is still very important. That is one of the main ways that people become Christian, actually.